Are you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out, as always, to my producer today, Sierra. How are you doing?
I am so good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Can you believe it is October?
It's finally feeling like it. I felt like summer lasted forever.
Well, I mean, in here, we're almost in the 80s in Wisconsin today. So summer's not going out without a fight, at least here. But pretty soon we'll be complaining that it's too cold with the snow.
Seriously.
And we don't want to give out our power, though, which leads me to today's episode. It's titled Stop Outsourcing Permission and Power. And my guest, Sheila Delaney, and I will explore why leaders can't afford to outsource permission and power and how INsourcing resets the playing field. Drawing on her journey with autoimmune illness and insights about the hidden patterns that many women share, Sheila gets personal about what it takes to disrupt our own patterns and cultivate radical self-trust that others can lean into. Listeners will leave with fresh ways to notice the choices they make on autopilot, reclaim resilience, and be even braver forces for good wherever they are. If you have had enough of outsourcing permission and power and are ready to INsource to set yourself apart, you won't want to miss today's discussion. But let me first tell you a bit about my guest. Sheila Delaney is a longtime executive facilitator and coach and host of the podcast Crazy Beautiful Truth, which I had the privilege of being on. She draws on both her legal mind and artistic inclinations to spark authentic leadership, starting with radical self-responsibility. She's based in Seattle and has two young adult daughters who keep her tuned into the world of work young women are stepping into. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Sheila.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And it's a topic close to my heart, as you know, and I love talking to you because we have fun.
Yes, we do. It's a great conversation. So, and again, if you didn't catch the name of her podcast, you definitely want to go check it out, especially the one I'm on, Crazy Beautiful Truth. But during this first segment, we're going to talk about how Sheila got started on this journey. So let's start from the beginning. What was your call to adventure, your origin story of sorts?
Yeah, I will say that I outsourced a lot for a really long time, as so many of us do as women. And my body started to talk to me in ways that I consistently ignored. I did a beautiful job of staying focused on some random goal that somebody set for me that was of service. I don't want to make it sound as though it wasn't of service. But I, went to school. I got good grades. I became a banker. I left banking. I went and did my law degree. I went into banking law and I loved every minute of it. But what I missed was that when I started, I wanted to live the literary life. I started as an English major. And so my parents had to talk with me, Sheila, what are you going to do with that? You want to own a house someday, right? And so somewhere along the way, my body started to talk to me and I started to have health crises. And I feel really grateful for those moments now. So I had in law school, it sounds very dramatic, but it was all fine, spoiler alert. I had a brain bleed. And so I had a small tumor that ruptured and bled into my brain. And I was under watch and I was in the hospital for I'd say it was close to 2 weeks under observation. Every night I'd hear, tomorrow we're going to do brain surgery. And then I wake up in the morning, they go, maybe we're okay. It looks like it's resorbing. And off we'd go, 2 weeks long. And we never ended up needing to do it. But it was this wake up call of, wait, what's going on? And I did not hang on to it past about a couple of weeks, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm paying all this deep attention, dropped right back into the grind, I'll say,
Yep.
back into the hustle. Fast forward, and I had an autoimmune issue attack. It's called a Parsonage-Turner syndrome for anyone who cares about names of things. But I had this chronic acute pain in my shoulder, and they told me, yeah, we know exactly what this is. They could see it on an MRI. The muscle looked dead, like you could see. And so they said, you're going to have chronic acute pain, but don't worry, we'll put you on Oxy. It'll last 1.5 to 3 years. I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. And they said, but then don't worry because it's going to go away. The pain's going to stop. And then you'll lose function of your arm from shoulder to fingertip for another 1.5 to 3 years. Call us back if you have any questions. This was a voicemail.
Wow.
Right? So note to self, I switched doctors. Voicemail was not the way to deliver that. And that's exactly the way it went, Erica. It was the wildest thing. But what changed with this one, it got my attention. I had small children and I had an acute chronic pain issue and then absolute paralysis and friends who made a lot of fun of me and helped keep it light, right? The
Yes,
ones who,
yes.
hey, pass the salt, Sheila. No, never mind, you can't. But I began to ask different questions and I began to wonder, what is it that I have done to design my life in a way that I want to reach for that salt and I cannot reach for that which I desire? And this question rocked my world and started me on a healing journey that moved me through energetic healing. I became a Reiki master. I started returning to acupuncture. But it was the wake-up call that actually got my attention. And then I heard Dr. Gabor Maté, fast forward again, talking. He specializes in addiction and trauma, and he's a Canadian physician all over the news and all over social media right now, talking about how 80% of autoimmune sufferers are women. And I tell you, this got my attention. And he talks about what these women have in common and what we do as women so commonly that drop us into this position where our body begins to fight itself. And so I started to pay acute attention and notice this outsourcing, notice where I'd given away power and starting to reclaim it, starting to realize, wait, I have wisdom. Wait, I have experience. Wait, what if I know things? Yeah.
That, and and the thing is that's so important because many times we don't realize how much power we are giving away. And because it just becomes habit. And I think that's where we really need to step back. And like you said, become aware. It's that self-awareness and the looking inward that we have to do first in order to move forward.
Yes.
And that's where I know you did a little experiment, but we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about your experiment. But before we go, Sheila, tell folks how they can connect with you, how they can listen to your podcast and just know all things Sheila.
Sure. LinkedIn is probably the best place to go in terms of where I'm posting, and that's going to continue to be active. The podcast is called Crazy Beautiful Truth on audio. It's in all the places, but Spotify and Apple Podcasts, YouTube this season. So your episode and mine is on YouTube, which is great. And then the website to check out is the INsourcingWay.com.
Thank you so much. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. Go to getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Sheila Delaney. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's so my pleasure.
So during our first segment, we learned about your origin story. And during this segment, we're going to talk about your experiment. So Sheila, when I say your experiment, it was really just truly a couple questions you posed. First, what if we disrupt our patterns consciously?
Yes.
And second, what are you doing now differently than you used to? So tell us why these questions and then what you found out when you started asking yourself.
Well, I started asking, so this idea of pattern disruption is really important to me. And I know this as a coach, and you know this as a coach. I've been a coach for 22 years now. And I know that we get into these patterns and our patterns become our identity over time. And we lose track of the fact we even have them, right? We lose track of the ability to notice them because we're so socialized into them. And so bringing consciousness to that inquiry around disrupting patterns became a critical part of my physical healing. And I'll say that the journey was about 1.5 years instead of a full 3 to, no, I'd say 1.5 years. So a total of 3 years instead of 6. And I believe absolutely it's because I was asking these questions. And then this idea of what am I going to do differently? I realized as I noticed, where do I have patterns? I was a book junkie, right? Of course, I was a law student. I read a lot. I love to read. And, at one point I got rid of 600 books. Like this was the first purge. And I started to realize I'm reading these books, but I'm not doing with them what I did 15 years ago. I'm not paying attention in the same way. It's like I realized I was going through the motions with these really brilliant authors who do really brilliant work. These are so important. And I'm such an advocate of reading and taking in all of the wisdom around us.
Lifelong learning.
Exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly right. But then I started to wonder, wait, what do I know? What if I know stuff? I'm old enough, I'm long enough in the tooth, as it were, to have earned some wisdom in my own right. And I started to wonder what I thought. And I realized that I would start to gather my thoughts and then I'd read a great book and I'd think, how am I going to compare to this author? And I would defer what I thought I knew and take in what they said. So I said, I want to spend time with myself, with my own intellect, with my own experience. And so I went on an input fast. And I made this declaration. I was like, that's it, full stop. Now, full stop, I still bought books, but I put them in a pile because that's how I roll. And for a year, and I'd say it actually went longer than this, I went on an absolute input fast. I quit reading other people's books. I changed how I was listening to podcasts. I read for fun, for escapism, but that was fiction. And I began to get intimate with what are my own thoughts on any given topic. And it turns out I have a lot. It turns out I have no shortage of opinions, which should not be surprising. But there was so much, Erica, there was so much spaciousness.
Yeah.
When I quit trying to take in all the things and sort them in my brain. And then there was a secondary effect that I didn't anticipate, which is in my coaching sessions. What would happen before is somebody would say, oh, have you read this book? Did you? And I was like, oh yeah. And we'd just move on. What happened when I was not reading, they'd say, oh, well, this thing, have you read? I was like, no, I haven't. Tell me about it. What stuck? It became entirely different. And I began to realize all the times we both said, oh, we both read the book, we'd smile and nod and keep going forward without investigating and getting very, very curious about what did you take and what did I take?
Right.
And they were not always the same. That is
Mhm.
fear.
Oh, I mean, and it's like, what I hear you saying is that you really stopped taking into everyone else's opinions, the content, the noise, advice
Yes.
during this time. And it almost made you become more inquisitive, right? And wanting to know. And I love that because what I take from experience is going to be different potentially than what you take from experience. And then you can even have that deeper discussion as to, oh, why? And I think you learn a lot about yourself, but you also learn a lot about other people.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating and honestly so fun for anyone who's in the profession of, or the practice of being a student of human behavior, who's very, very interested in this idea of peopling, right? Because the world is going to keep worlding and people will keep peopling. I've got a dear friend who says that often as well. And to really attend to the details and to bring this inquisitiveness to even the books. We've read this thing in common. We both say, oh, yeah, that was a great book. Why?
Yeah.
What did it actually do for you? What did you take from it? Oh, that's interesting. I missed that entirely. Here's what I got. And then that continued to feed my curiosity. And I'd say this whole journey really has been about raising the bar on the questions that I ask
Yeah.
of myself and of others.
You almost as if you became more present and more rooted, and you were really partnering, right? As opposed to like just performing day to day, like you said, on autopilot, but being more present and partnering with the people around you, whether it's clients, partners, friends, colleagues, whatever it might be.
I would say that absolutely. And that rooted part of it was very important because I began to understand who I am.
Yeah.
Right. Now I say that I've always known who I was. I was one of those kids who knew who I was before, very, very early. Peer pressure was the thing I didn't really get, honestly, until I was 30, right? I knew who I was. I knew what I stood for. And even my flavor, and I think this is true for so many people, when we're doing when we are conscious of our leadership, when we're conscious of taking responsibility for our influence in the world, we pay attention to what's going on inside of ourselves. And so if there was a candidate who would be unlikely to be on autopilot, I thought I was it. Right. I have my stillness practice. I have a meditation practice. I am quick to check in. I metabolize emotion efficiently and effectively, right? Like all of these things. But man, it sneaks up.
Oh, yeah.
It sneaks up. And so my flavor of autopilot was fascinating because it was super stealthy. And was like, oh, look how conscious we're being in exactly the same way at exactly the same time, exactly every day over the course of weeks, right?
Yeah.
And I'm feeling so clever.
And it's even though I know, right? For me, it was going through grief. I've been through grief. I've lost both my parents. I've lost friends. But then when my son passed, it was like, I don't know grief because every situation's different. And when you might know what you should do, you might know where you should go. And yet doesn't always mean that you're doing it or doing it effectively.
Right. I think there's also the invitation to become our own best ally. And the more we know about ourselves, the more we're aligned and equipped to do that. And so becoming friendly for me with all of the parts of myself, which is what that journey was largely about, is like, oh, you have wisdom, you have wisdom. Oh, I don't like you so much, but I feel your wisdom, right? Those parts of me that get cringy. Turned out I'm pretty resilient. Turns out when I'm paying attention, when I'm getting still, when I am getting rooted, there's a lot I can handle. And there's a lot I also know not to handle. My boundaries are pretty secure.
You're talking my language, you're talking boundaries.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend who goes, she's like, Sheila, you are the queen of boundaries. And I was like, that in my 50s is the finest compliment I have received.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what worked. But before we go, tell folks how they can connect with you, learn more about your podcast and what you have coming up.
Yeah. Go to the INsourcingway.com. And if they could drop me a note there, let me know something that stood out from this conversation, questions, realizations, that'd be great. And LinkedIn, Sheila Delaney.
Thank you so much. I'm Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Sheila Delaney. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's such a delight.
Yeah. So during the last couple of segments, we've discussed Sheila's origin story and her experiment. During this segment, we're going to get into what worked. So let's just start with that. What worked?
The input fast, I recommend it for everybody. That there is a time, it doesn't have to be a year, but a week. We talk about phone fasts, electronic fasts, all of those as well. But I think taking that time to be with ourselves is potent medicine. It is a portal into something really profound in relationship to ourselves, and especially as leaders when we want to be at our best for others. So that was amazing. Asking big questions has really changed everything, and I've learned to be in relationship to the question in a different way. And this has worked absolute magic for myself. It has changed my parenting. It has changed my leadership, boards that I'm on, how I relate to the people who serve with me in that space, and then with my clients. And, one of the things, Erica, that I really discovered and I really believe is that when we ask question, all of our internal resources go immediately to work for the answer. And if we are asking low quality questions, and what I mean by that is like, why do bad things always happen to me? Your mind is going to go to work and find you an answer to that question. Why is it that it always seems like it works for everybody else and not for me? Your
Yeah.
mind is going to find you an answer, right? If I start asking, why are things always working out for me? The mind's going to find that too. And so raising the caliber and the quality of the questions and becoming really intimate with curiosity, this, I would say, has been the most profound change and has worked across every area of my life, including the aforementioned meditation times, right? What is the question that I sit with? I sit with questions more than mantras or declarations or positive affirmations. I don't do those anymore. Now I make sure I'm asking really good, focusing questions like, I wonder what's possible.
Yeah.
What's possible if? That was so I used to do, I don't know, a lot of people do this, and I did it for years. Pick a word for the year at the beginning of every year.
Mm-hmm.
I changed that. And at the beginning of this year, I chose the question, what's possible? If I show up, what's possible? And this is the year I started a podcast. This is the year I started the book in a different, this is the year I moved houses. My kids got launched. Everything is different.
Yeah. Well, and I like that because I mean, our brains are usually hardwired to have a fear of the unknown. And so they go right to the negative, right? Because
Yeah.
if you go to the negative, at least then, okay, what can I do to not do that? As opposed to what if, that question, what if, or what is possible, but not on the negative side of things, right? It's what is that saying? And I just had it in my head and it just walked away, but it says, oh, but what if I fall? Oh, but darling, what if you fly, right?
Yeah.
What if you soar? And that's exactly it. And the input fast I love for a couple reasons. One, I mean, thoughts become things, and everything that we put into our body, not just what we digest from a food, from a nutrition, from a fluid intake, but what we read, who we're around, what we listen to, what we watch on TV, all that also becomes part of us. And
Absolutely.
sometimes we just need to step away. And not only from the negativity and the toxicity, but also are we looking too much at what other people are giving us and not what do I think?
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, you hear all this and one of my favorite lines to people and say, like, you know what, I'm not educated on that topic. I've heard different things. So tell me what you've heard in what backs that up, because I'm just not educated on that. And part of the reason I'm not educated is lately I just don't even want to turn on the news. I'm like, and I'm not trying to put my head in the sand, right? But at the same time, I'm like, I just need, and then I'm like, you know what? I feel like I'm disconnected. But I also felt a lot lighter for
Yeah.
a good bit of time. And then it's like, okay, so educate me on that. And those discussions, when you can have that, is, I'm not familiar. I don't have a point of view on that because I'm not educated. And then you actually get discussions, kind of like what you were talking about with yourself, is you started listening to yourself and, well, what do I feel about that? Not what does all the other influencers or, self-help folks out there say.
Yes. And what you're pointing to that I so appreciate, Erica, that matters so much to me, and I guess I would say this is the third thing that worked, is this idea of taking radical responsibility
Yes.
well-being. And so when I'm talking about the insourcing way and the way that I've used this with clients, the entry point is always radical self-responsibility. And that's not, responsibility is such a loaded word, right? Like there are the responsibilities that come with our roles. And I can still hear it in my mother's voice of that was your responsibility. And it sounds punitive, right? As opposed to we have this life and the privilege of taking responsibility for our gifts, our talents, our passions, our interests, our desires. What do we want to create and be a part of? And so, what you're talking about, and one of many places I think you and I align, is the idea of taking radical responsibility for my own well-being and what's going on inside of my own system
Yes.
allows me to meet others. And it's not because I'm going to get it perfect. It's because I'm taking responsibility for making an effort and noticing what happens. And then every time I take radical responsibility, I grow a little bit of self-trust, right? And
Yeah.
then these two things work together to balance each other out so neatly. Yeah. And so that's another thing that works really, really well is what does self-responsibility look like?
Yeah. And it more than just accountability,
Yes,
right? Because I
absolutely.
think accountability, yes, we should be accountable for our actions and our reactions, but
Mhm.
it's also responsibility to take that first step. And whether that is taking a breath, whether that is pausing, whether that's taking action, and just I always like to set this out there as not making a decision is still making a decision. and
Absolutely.
and sometimes people think, oh, I'm just not going to make a decision right now and then I can just avoid it. No, you just made a decision by not making a decision.
Yes.
So taking that radical responsibility and accountability for yourself is ideal, and it's so important to get you back to taking back your power, taking back the permission, and taking back, I think you said it, the authority and agency.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And
So
that's so true.
yeah. Now you have, I put it in the show. So if you don't get this when we throw it out there, it is on the show links and everything. But if you want folks to drop you a note and share one question or thought that came up while you're listening to the conversation today, that was the insourcingway.com/get rooted.
Yes. And if they go in and do that, it's really helpful to me because I am constantly learning about this way of working with this information,
Yeah.
and the way that the model, it's not a model, the way this path, it's very dynamic, has continued to unfold. And so it really helps me to think about and to know what questions come up for people when we're talking about radical responsibility. What's the resistance? And if they go ahead and do that, I would be delighted to send them the model that comes with some coaching questions. There is a self audit that comes with that says, hey, how am I doing on my taking radical responsibility? Where am I sitting with radical self trust? And I'll add, where do I sit with radical self compassion and kindness, which helps me to grow resilience.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we're going to take a break, but before we do, you also have an event coming up in January 2026.
Yes. I'm so excited about it.
Yes,
So
tell us about it.
so the details are still evolving, but this is for women leaders where we are going to be deep diving into what is it to insource your power. And, I'll say for me, the definition of a leader, there's so many leaders out there. So,
Yes.
a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for their influence, right? Anyone who's going to take that responsibility. Our professional leaders have to do so by virtue of title and position. This is going to be about where do I have influence and how do I take responsibility for it from an internal, what do I know about this already?
I love that. So make sure you get out there, get in touch with Sheila so that you can get that information when all the details are finalized.
Dates are in process, so we're looking at options right now.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to finish out the show with the freedom of the insourcing way. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips, special events, pricing for upcoming coaching sessions, and other fantastic and exciting new information at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Sheila Delaney. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's always a delight to just have a wonderful conversation with you.
So great. I enjoy it immensely. Thank you.
So tell folks how they can connect with you and learn more about you and listen to your podcast.
Crazy Beautiful Truth is the podcast. So you can find it all put together, no spaces or dashes. Crazy Beautiful Truth on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and also on YouTube. Comes out every Wednesday.
Wonderful. So now during the last segments, we've discussed your origin story, your experiment, and what worked. During this last segment, we're going to really talk more about the INsourcing way. So just tell our listeners, what is it? What do we need to know? And how can we just jump right in and get started on it?
Love it. Yes. So what it is a path to reclaiming our power and our agency. And this is the freedom to make choices and decisions, choices being the quick things day to day, decisions being the things that are course setting. And when we do that from a place of really grounded, rooted agency, everything goes better. We are more creative. We are more resilient. We are more observant. We are able to take in more context when we're navigating the world. And so I've been working this way with clients for a while and then applying it to my life. And the entry point really is to start with paying attention, like really divine, beautiful attention to what do I do in a day and how do I do it? And the key is to start to pay attention to the patterns and notice where I have defaults, where I turn my brain off and I just keep going. Suddenly I find myself, oh, how did I get here? Right. And so that's about our behavior. We're looking at behaviors. We're looking at choices we make without making them, exactly to your point, which you already have spoken to. And what we do in that space, we always start with radical responsibility. The INsourcing way is about looking at these three aspects: radical responsibility, radical self-trust, and radical self-compassion. When we're talking about this radical self-responsibility, if you only take responsibility, and this is one of the things that we do as women, it's one of the things Dr. Gabor Maté speaks to, is that we take responsibility for everybody's emotional needs. Like it's our problem how everybody's doing. That's one of the many things we have in common. But if you only have responsibility, it's me taking responsibility for my stuff, your stuff, and everybody else's stuff. And now I'm a martyr.
Yes.
We've moved into martyr energy. The net effect is resentment.
Mm-hmm.
And the punchline is we are isolated from all of our connections and we are not in connection to ourselves or others, right? So you need to balance that. The balancing energy is self-trust, right? Self-trust allows us to have boundaries, allows us to say, this is my yes and this is my no, and I'm trustworthy with those yeses and nos. I'm not going to wither under the pressure of trying to just name a boundary. But self-trust taken by itself too far, suddenly we end up in arrogance, narcissistic inclinations, and judgment of others. So this is a place, if you want something done, I got to do it done right. I got to do it myself, right? So now we're in judgment.
Yeah.
Everybody else is a fool. Punchline, isolation, disconnection from self, disconnection from others. So those two things need to be in relationship. In the last couple of years, I realized there is this third element, and this really is about grace and self-compassion. And how do we bring that into these two places? Because otherwise we can just be in the hustle, right? I'm taking responsibility for all the things and I trust myself to do it as well as I can. And I trust myself to have boundaries. But what do I do when I make a mistake? What do I do when I overextend? What do I do when I'm clumsy? Because we're all clumsy. We're all navigating this as well as we can. So the self-compassion piece becomes really important. And much like the other two, there is a way in which we can distort self-compassion. And I called the bubble bath and bonbons era, right? Where
Yes.
suddenly we're in inertia. Oh, wait, I can't. We go into self-pity. We go into withdrawal. And punchline here, we end up disconnected from everybody else and we end up in isolation. So the INsourcing way is about giving us access to our internal responsibility, trust, and kindness. And ideally, if you picture it like a Venn diagram, the more we are in agency, the more these three things overlap. And it's very dynamic. We have days where You know what, today I have to be in more responsibility, or I've wobbled a little bit. I'm feeling in my judgment, in that self-trust place. So it's a very dynamic relationship, but the self-trust is always the radical responsibility, the willingness to notice, the willingness to say, I have a life that I've been given, a body that is equipped for doing things out in the world. How do I take responsibility for living this life as beautifully and well and effectively as I can? That's the insourcing way.
And I love that, because we need to allow ourselves, because we will make mistakes, right? I mean, we're human.
Yes.
Allowing ourselves space and grace for when that happens. And also, as you said, balance is part of my business name, balanced, right?
Yep.
But sometimes I think there's no such thing as balance, right? There's such thing as alignment. So we can try to create balance with the understanding that it's never going to be a perfect scale, right? It's not going to be across the board. It's more going to be always a teeter-totter, kind of going back and forth. But we can create some sort of alignment. And how do we work through that? And when it's not perfectly aligned, because again, it will never be perfectly aligned, but alignment with ourselves, alignment with our values, our beliefs, where we want to go in this world, and beyond. That way, we can give ourselves that responsibility, because now we're in alignment with what we need to do. So now we're taking that radical responsibility, and we're allowing ourselves the space and grace when we make a mistake or it doesn't go as expected.
Right. I love that word alignment so much. I was just with a group facilitating a session yesterday where we were talking about one of our core agreements was alignment over agreement. And sometimes it's easier to think about in a team context. When you think about all of the different perspectives, we've got 12 different minds and experiences and lenses in the room. It's a cross-functional team. And this idea of coming into alignment around what are we after, what are we trying to create, was really beautiful to watch this group do. And so when we look at the parts of ourselves and we think about that alignment, for me, I often go to head, heart, and body, right? So when my head and my heart are aligned, and my thoughts and my intellect are aligned with how I feel and where I'm inspired, beautiful things happen. But when, and then the body just does. There's a natural flow. But I find when the head and the heart are in conflict, I think I need to do this thing, but I'm feeling pulled in this other direction. We get pulled out of alignment. We get pulled out of our structural integrity is how I feel it. But what holds the head and the heart? The body. So the body can be trusted to metabolize and to hold the complexity of that space where head and heart are trying to reconcile if we can get still. And so in that moment, when we notice the conflict, the way to take radical responsibility is just to notice, okay, I'm going to be still and listen. That's what responsibility looks like, right? In those hard moments.
How can we get there? Like, what questions should our listeners ask when we get stuck there, in between the difference between what our head and our heart, when they're not aligned?
Yeah, great question. So one of the practices first is I invite people into their breath. And the Heart Math Institute talks about this a lot too. There's a lot of data and information around how heart-centered breathing pulls us back into our body. And it begins to, it creates a coherence in our heart rhythms and our brain rhythms. And so taking breath cannot be overstated, the value of real breath. And so that just slows us down for a beat. And we can do that in the middle of a meeting. And this is, back when I was an attorney, even when things were heated or when I'm facilitating very complex, very hostile kinds of events, breath, it can just be a beat. And then the question we ask is, what's possible? If we just hold this possibility, what if I'm okay? What's possible if I'm grounded? What's possible if we're able to just move through this? And there's this way of the questions that I ask in that space, there's a presumption that we're going to come into alignment because that is our natural rhythm. We want to come back to that.
Yeah.
And so we presume that into place. What's possible? What do I notice? And then connecting to the breath. Those are the three first things. And then there are other things over time, of course.
Right. No.
To your
And
point.
I think, well, and it makes sense, right? And I always say, practice the pause, right? Practice the pause. Sometimes we aren't listening to hear, we're listening to respond. And we can get over that and just listen. We can get to that alignment a lot quicker.
Yes.
So now if folks want to get a copy of the model, they just go to theinsourcingway.com/get rooted and pop you some questions, and you can send that out to them.
Absolutely. And then they'll be on the list as well to make sure that they get the information as soon as this retreat comes together. So as soon as we have more information, I'd love to give it right now, but we had a date mishap. So
No, that's okay.
Good.
It's forthcoming, guys.
Yep.
So thank you again for being on the show today. It's always a pleasure to have you, and I wish you all the best with the retreat.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your good work in the world and really your work with leaders on this idea of getting rooted and staying there and how it's
Thank you.
It's beautiful work.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific right here on Transformation Talk Radio. One last personal message. If you are hurting or need help, please know the world needs you and it is a better place with you in it. Don't let the hard days win. Reach out for assistance. Call, text, or chat the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there is no charge. Or text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor through Crisis Text Line. It's a global not-for-profit organization, again, 24/7, and it's free and confidential. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing day. Know that you are loved, and I'm looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.